有效嘅可以去舒緩啦。我點知道佢有冇舒緩啊？如果我嘅手感覺嘅地方感覺到有任何嘅不同色素火嘅釋放，或者有脈絡嘅釋放，就好似而家打開嗰個枕骨後面枕將個手感變嘅成個咧就係批咗嘅一個將心歸你，令我再次更新蛻變。我哋叫 therapeutic pose。
Craniosacral therapy is a very gentle energy and manual therapy. Using his hands, therapist applies gentle pressure in different areas of the client's body. The healing process is guided by changes in client's craniosacral rhythm, which is being monitored during the entire session by the therapist. In very basic terms, the craniosacral system is the nurturer and protector of the central nervous system that allows the therapist to work not only with the cranium, but with the entire body of the client. The human skull is a puzzle box made out of many different bones. Some of those bones have very limited range of mobility. This mobility is an important part of the system controlling the pressure within the brain. Some craniosacral techniques are specifically designed to improve the mobility of those bones, in return promoting healthy and optimal pressure within the skull and the brain. During the session, therapist creates gentle and peaceful environment, inviting and promoting the necessary corrections in client's condition. Under the direct supervision of client's holistic system, using intentions, energy, physical touch, and specific techniques, therapists guides and supports the natural healing and self-correcting ability of client's body and central nervous system. In addition to addressing specific conditions and illnesses, craniosacral therapy offers 10 steps protocol designed by Dr. John Ablacher himself. Basically, this is a tune-up for entire craniosacral system, removing restrictions and improving its functions. Hello, I'm Robert, founder of Healing Simple, and I would like to thank you for watching this short video and also encourage you to find out more about craniosacral therapy and try it for yourself. If you have any questions about craniosacral, somato-emotional release therapies, or healing in general, you can contact us. Thank you and be well.
If we順應頭先嗰個自如全身五臟曲，我哋係 feel 住佢嘅筋膜嘅輪動，去帶動佢嗰個身體嘅反應。咁嗰個係佢身體做主導。 我哋嘅計算，咁所以唔會過多嘅。佢夠咧，佢就唔會 take up 㗎啦。咁所以頭先你話做幾耐咧？任何一陣洋葱皮嘅釋放都係一個好嘅治療嘅效果。喺我哋唔知頭唔知路，個 client 有唔知頭唔知路，原來 approach 話咧咁樣咧都有啦20%大師嘅功效。
斜照，心興奮怎麼遮掩？回味撞人無數，天真的可愛笑臉，沒有了困了煩惱，拋走了世俗負累，來共醉於此刻歌聲裏。
Hello， 大家好，歡迎晒健康知多啲，又係我你哋嘅節目主持人 Tessa。嗱，自然療法我相信好多人都有聽過啦，但係其實佢入邊係包括啲乜嘢，或者係點樣用嘅咧？今日好開心請到 Dr. Chan 上嚟，歡迎你 Dr. Chan。你好。上嚟我哋健康知多啲，同我哋講下呢個自然療法嘅喎。係咯，其實 Dr. Chan 啊，自然療法咧喺香港咧而家都算幾普及下嘅，但係好多人都唔知其實自然療法係啲咩咯。不如同我哋嘅觀眾講下。
嗱，基本上咧，自然療法嘅範圍係非常之闊嘅。除咗西醫以外咧，大部分嘅醫學咧亦都歸納自然療法。咁香港人最多就聽過好多草藥學啦，例如中草藥啦、西草藥啦、印度草藥啦。咁另外咧，同類療法即係順勢療法，由於英國皇室3代採用，所以好多人都會聽過。咁音樂療法啦，咁而家嘅音樂療法咧唔係聽音樂咁簡單嘅，佢德國嘅醫院咧係有做臨床嚇，咁有醫治嘅功效。咁另外譬如一啲自然療法嘅脊椎治療啦，咁近年好多人好緊張，好多情緒病啦。咁另外有一個叫顱底治療啦，就調節自律神經嘅。咁呢啲全部都歸納喺自然療法嘅範圍裏邊嘅。
好啦，咁我哋要 update 下我哋嘅近況先。你除咗做份咩工咧
？update 我嘅近況啊，咁我冇乜得做嘅啫。咁好多人就問我：咦，東東啊，你咁我就唔係返醫院做嘢嘅。咁但係佢問我：你做咩而家咁？我話我有兩個選擇嘅啫。如果我唔係做翻我專業咧，我就做清潔阿姐咯。
湊仔
清潔阿姐，咁所以其實我都係翻做我醫療有關嘅嘢啦，做翻營養師有關嘅嘢啦。咁不過做嘅公司就比較特別啲，佢係一間好傳統嘅西醫，而係一個自然療法嘅地方。
自然療法
係啦，咁俾我嘅感覺就係，咦啲嘢好唔同。究竟同我咩唔 match？
有啲咩嘅自然療法咧？嗰度？譬
如佢有自然療法醫師喺度啦，咁然之後，
譬如邊一類型嘅自然療法好多類型嘅，譬如係sound therapy 啊、art therapy 啊。
佢有音樂治療，
音樂治療，有
顱脊治療。
顱脊即係頭骨嘅顱脊。
我哋叫做顱脊治療，即係 cranial sacral therapy。咁而呢一樣嘢咧，呢個咩咧就即係同頭顱同埋成個脊骨，亦都同我哋全身筋膜有關嘅治療。咁呢一個治療其實咧，亦都一個好特別嘅治療，就係我有興趣到我有去上堂。咁 咁而佢做治療期間咧，要做一個好安靜定嘅一個形式咧，咁其實類似我哋啲入咗 alpha 波嘅狀態嘅。咁其實老師就會話啊，其實我哋唔係去治療個病人，而係我哋將佢帶翻入去個大我嗰度，等佢嘅身體自己個自我療愈嘅方法。
好，咁我哋今一集嘅 Our TV 自然療法知多啲咧，就好開心喎，好榮幸嚟到咧高永文醫生嘅診所。咁咧今一集咧，我哋就想睇下西醫點樣睇自然療法，或者睇整全醫學有啲咩專業嘅意見。咁啊，大家都認識高永文醫生啦。咁佢自己本身係一個骨科嘅外科醫生啦。咁但係亦都有差唔多超過10年嘅時間咧喺醫管局嗰度服務。咁亦都係對中西結合嘅醫學嘅推動咧係不遺餘力嘅。咁過去包括癌症嘅病人啦、戒毒啦，或者啲心理學嘅一啲範疇嘅社會服務咧，高醫生都不遺餘力。咁我諗呢個相信大家即係觀眾都會知㗎啦。咁所以我哋今日咧好榮幸，亦都即係喺高醫生百忙之中咧抽閒嚟同我哋解答幾個關於自然療法嘅問題。
大家好。
大家好。咁咧，我其實第一樣想知咧，就係其實西醫咧點樣睇整全醫學咧？究竟有冇呢一個名稱，或者佢哋點樣去認識整全醫學係啲咩嚟嘅咧？
如果講西醫，即係話我哋現代嘅主流醫學咧嚇，咁其實對整全醫學咧，其實一路都有個演化住嘅一個睇法嘅。咁譬如話以前嚟講，我哋會即係將呢個自然醫學係將佢分到好清楚，譬如話有啲係中醫，有啲係印度嘅醫學，有啲係西藏醫學，咁等等嚇。咁但係其實漸漸嚟講，西方醫學界咧都會將自然療法或者即係整體嚟講嘅其他嘅一啲我哋叫替代性嘅醫學咧，會攞一個比較整體啲嘅觀念，就將現代醫學即係西醫同其他呢啲唔同嘅療法咧，就係一個整體嘅睇法。咁如果你話問我自然療法有啲咩特別咧，以我嘅睇法就係話，通常嚟講自然療法都會係用一啲比較溫和同埋一啲安全嘅一啲方法。咁而西醫咧就會係基於多啲咧現代科學去嘅研究，然後產生一啲譬如化學藥物啊，或者一啲用唔同嘅物理嘅能量去做治療，而呢啲咧嗰個力度通常都會比較強啲同猛啲嘅。譬如話，如果西醫我哋用到嘅X 射線啊，或者係一啲放射嘅治療啊，呢啲都係自然嘅能量。喺自然療法裏面，音樂嗰啲音波都係能量。但係如果你要我比較咧，西醫用嗰啲咧好多時就係一啲比較猛烈嘅一啲能量，而自然療法用嘅係可能一啲比較符合日常我哋見到嘅一啲能量，咁係溫和啲。
咁即係其實一個有需要嘅時候就配合一啲猛烈啲嘅療法，咁亦都可能喺輔助嘅時候就用一啲溫和啲嘅療法，係咪咁樣？冇錯，
根本就算自己西醫本身都係咁樣嘅，即係喺一個西醫嘅體系裏面咧，我哋都係睇因應病人嘅需要，有陣時要用到最猛烈嘅方法，可能係外科手術。有陣時就要用到一啲比較溫和嘅方法，一啲物理治療啊，或者一啲藥物嘅治療咁樣。
咁你覺得譬如喺芸芸嘅自然療法當中咧，我哋可能舉啲例啦，因為10幾集嘅節目咧，我哋都提過，可能有香薰、有音樂治療、有心理治療，或者有營養治療。咁你覺得嗰幾樣嘢係點樣可以配搭落去西醫西藥嗰度一齊用嘅咧？
因為其實而家現代醫學嚟講咧，其實我哋都好多研究指出咧，一啲環境上邊嘅因素嘅元素，譬如話一啲氣味啊，一啲音樂啊，其實佢都會即係透過我哋身體，譬如話我哋嘅神經系統或者咩咧，其實會影響到身體一個機能嘅。咁譬如話舉一個例子，若果一啲香薰嘅治療或者音樂嘅治療，佢能夠透過我哋嘅中樞神經系統，係能夠產生到一個對個人體產生一個比較平靜嘅作用嘅。 咁其實我相信都有好多研究指出咗咧。咁呢個對於佢譬如一個人嘅喺西方醫學經常會觀察一個病人嗰啲有生嘅啲資料裏面咧，譬如血壓啊嗰啲咧，其實都會有一個具體嘅影響出到嚟。咁所以即係漸漸嚟講咧，我覺得咧係我哋可以將自然嘅療法同西醫療法咧係有一個配合。譬如話，我哋如果要醫一個血壓高嘅病人咧，病人嚟講咧，如果你純粹用西藥去醫咧，咁可能有陣時啲西藥嘅用嘅劑量會用到比較高啲。咁因而咧嗰個藥物嘅毒副作用咧，可能都會顯著啲。但係如果我哋能夠用其他嘅方法，係都能夠間接影響到個病人，令到佢嘅自然嗰個基線嗰個血壓都係低啲。咁我哋就算真係要用西藥去治療咧，都可能唔需要用到咁大嘅劑量。所以變咗好多時，我哋而家就唔係一個排除一係用你，一係用我嘅方法，而係話究竟呢兩種嘅治療方法可唔可以去即係去結合埋一齊咧？譬如就以我哋講中醫都係咁樣。咁而家好多時治療一啲症狀，譬如癌症嘅病人，我哋都會即係研究下，如果西醫係用手術、電療、化療，咁而中醫有某啲方面嘅治療，譬如針灸啊，或者係一啲推拿啊、拔罐啊，甚至係中醫嘅藥物，佢能夠配合到邊啲方面呢？咁譬如話，如果我哋用電療、化療，可能咧會對佢體質會有啲影響，令到病人譬如話，如果電療咧屬性係比較熱嘅，可以令到個病人喺中醫嘅角度嚟講產生一啲陰虛，即係火旺嘅一啲咁嘅病徵嗰陣，中醫可以用佢嗰啲滋陰嘅一啲嘅療法，或者有啲情況會令到病人係虛嘅咧，可以用一啲固本培元嘅方法，咁就會大家產生一啲即係互相配合嘅效果。咁而家即係我相信自然療法同西醫都係用咁嘅角度去睇咧，我諗對將來我哋點樣去醫病人咧，其實可能會係有一個比較顯著嘅一個質量嗰方面咧，能夠做到一個改善。
咁即係其實即係一啲平日嘅生活細節裏邊，好似好少嘅事咧，原來係隱藏住好多嘅問題，或者係會影響我哋嘅身體狀況。咁但係喺另一個角度咧，如果正話阿 Dr. C 都講啦，喺個頭腦方面，即係其實正話我哋嘅症狀咧，係正正佢所講咧，係喺頭腦方面嚟到影響我哋咁多嘅症狀引發出嚟嘅喎。咁如果喺你嘅角度嚟講咧，係點樣去處理呢方面嘅問題嘅咧？
我哋其實就叫呢啲做顱脊嘅自然醫學啦，咁嘅統稱。咁但係簡單講，我哋其實同中醫有一啲嘅理念咧，其實好相通嘅。咁我哋就簡單4句説話，其實咧就係即係我哋講呢度4句。全健身心就防病長。其實我哋應該要去有個觀念去做預防醫學，即係唔好睇少頭先我哋講頭痛，少少頭暈，咁就唔理佢。其實嗰個係一個我哋講咧預防即係疾病嘅機制。咁我哋講如果用中醫嘅角度，我哋都要去一個辨因或者辨證，去揾翻嗰個相對嘅問題去處理。咁呢個係第一個我哋講個理論咧。第二咧就係咩咧？要將身心嘅問題合埋一齊去了解嘅。好多時我哋講一啲即係傳統啲嘅醫療啦，就佢個小朋友有一啲即係心理嘅問題咧，就歸咎於心理作用。譬如佢朝頭早起身嗌唔舒服唔返學咁樣，好多時就以為佢呢啲心理作用嚟嘅啫，即係又係掉以輕心。但係其實我哋講喺嗰個顱脊，尤其是喺個腦科嘅神經醫學，其實情緒同埋我哋身體嘅症候，包括頭痛，可能同埋瞓覺質素，同埋情緒，譬如我哋講磨牙，其實本身係有一個結合嘅機制嘅。如果啲症候同時出現嘅咧，我哋其實就更加需要咧去考究翻咧背後嗰個共因係啲乜嘢。咁呢個都係我哋即係少少呢個嘅幾近似中醫講嗰個理念。即係譬如我哋講臟腑其實都有唔同嘅情志噶嘛。譬如我哋講磨牙就係頭先阿周醫師講係個肝嘅問題。咁嗰個可能同佢有啲憤怒，咁會有啲相關。咁呢個就係我哋要將嗰個身心嘅關係咧，去多一啲嘅應用啦。咁第二個我哋講咧，色順反射體弱強。咁原來咧我哋咧都要去睇身體唔同嘅跡象。咁中醫我哋講可以透過打脈 我哋所謂透過望聞問切係咪？咁但係我哋咧其實咧可以透過咧觀察一啲咩顱脊，我哋講筋膜嘅一啲嘅模式嘅 pattern。咁嗰個其實簡單嘅一個身體健康嘅咧一個觀察嘅資訊嚟嘅。咁陣間我都會講多啲嗰個開合嘅筋膜模式係點樣。咁但係除咗睇，我哋就係咩咧？問診其實咧就係關於佢嗰個情緒啊、睡眠質素。而另外一樣嘢我哋比較特別嘅咧，我哋叫觸診。我哋就可以感應咧身體嘅筋膜，包括譬如大人小朋友都好啦，譬如頭顱骨啊，唔同嘅地方啊，其實嗰個筋膜咧其實有啲似咧中醫講緊嗰個經絡。有一啲唔同嘅穴位嘅反射，咁嗰啲其實都係一啲我哋好重要嘅信息咧，去俾我哋身體知道我哋裏面發生咩事。
That structure follows function. The body is a unit. The body heals itself, and the body is self-regulating. And the waters he called cerebrospinal fluid the river of life. And he said the waters of man, the soul of man lives in the waters of the fascia.
Wow, and this is the founder of osteopathy.
Yes, yes. And his famous quote is saying, "He who is able to reason must know that unless withering fields are irrigated at once, all hope for a harvest of health is lost."
And what does he mean by that?
He meant that in order to have the brain function as a whole unit, a field of produce, we need to flood it with circulation. And the water is the cerebrospinal fluid, and it gives nutrition to the brain. It's the water of our tomatoes of our head. And here comes the next person comes is William Garner Sutherland. He's the father of cranial osteopathy. He was a student of Sutherland.
Of Andrew Taylor Still. He was
Of Andrew Taylor Still. He was born in 1873 and died in 1954. And he said, I just happen to have this other little skull. He said, structure follows function. That's what Andrew Taylor Still says. Well, if that's the case, why is the skull, why does it have different bones? Why isn't it just a coconut? Well, it's got these sutures, he's got these joints. And he looked at the temporal bones and the beautiful sphenoid bone. And he said, my God, these bones look like they're designed to move. They look like the gills of a fish. Gills of a fish move throughout life. This must be why it is. And so he spent the remainder of his life experimenting. His wife wrote a lovely book called With Thinking Fingers, and she documented also his exploration. Yeah, and he put it in the old days. This is 1902, 1903, and in the 1910s around there. The baseball gloves was like a great big pizza pie. He put the baseball glove around his head, strapped it on. He also took his wife's beautiful butter bowl that they churned butter with, carved out one section of it, put it on his head, and put straps around it, so it would limit the motion of one side of his head.
So what did people think of this at this time?
Well, they thought he was a nut. And then he would ask his wife to record what would happen. And so one of the pioneers, we have to say, one of the pioneers of the work in craniosacral therapy is Mrs. Sutherland, because she had to live with this funny man. And so what he experienced was, he experienced head pain. You would too if you had a wooden bowl in your head, right? But he had word loss, word retrieval loss, changes in his vision, longitudinal spinal back pain, and he had a lot of the symptoms that his patients were presenting with. And so from that reasoning, he said these bones and the motion of the skull must be important for health. And so he started formulating, using his hands, to use the bones as handles to access this beautiful membrane inside the skull, called the meningeal membrane. And so he called cerebrospinal fluid, he called it the breath of life. And he said that in order for health, there had to be reciprocal tension mechanism. So there had to be a balance between the occiput and the sacrum. And he called the movement in the waters of the brain tides. as if they were water and ocean tides. And he said, what we need to do is we need to be still and know. And if we be still and we listen to the body, it will express itself. He was a fabulous man. And then comes Upledger. And he also, Sutherland also said we need to know our anatomy. We need to learn our anatomy.
So everybody's stressing anatomy. It really
They all
sounds
are.
like,
They all are. And here comes my direct teacher, John Upledger. He was born in 1933. He died most recently in 2012. He was a wonderful friend. He was my teacher. He was my friend. He wrote the introduction to my first book, Lessons from the Sessions. He was a fabulous man. He was an osteopath, and he wanted to be a surgeon. He wanted to do surgery and prescribe medications, and he had a patient in around 1970 by the name of Delbert. And this man had pain in his legs of unknown origin. And they saw a neurosurgeon, and the neurosurgeon said, I did see this one time in a rotation in Japan. And what it was, there was a piece of calcific plaque in the neck that was strangulating the central nervous system, affecting the nerves most distant, and namely the feet. So they did a myelogram, and they did find this piece of calcific plaque. They did the surgery, and Upledger was assisting, and his role was to hold the dural tube still so that this doctor can debride that little piece of calcific plaque.
And that dural tube, that's the membrane that's encasing the spinal cord.
Yes, that's the meningeal membrane, fascia. And so they opened the spine up with what they call laminectomy, and they opened the spine up. They could see the area that needed to be debrided. The calcific plaque is like a little piece of dried fish food, a little like a cornflake. Yeah. And so here's the hole, and he was to hold it open. And what happened was the dural tube was pulsating and moving in and out, and in and out. And the neurosurgeon said, hey, John, hold that still. John says, I'm having a hard time here. What is this? No one in the operating theater knew what that was. So he did hold it still. They did remove the plaque, and Delbert did get better. And so they went on. Upledger was intrigued by that, and he went back and he looked into the foundations of osteopathy, and he bumped into the work of William Garner Sutherland. He started studying that work. He started taking classes. He became a nationally known cranial osteopath. He was given a grant to be part of a study at Michigan State University to prove or disprove Sutherland. So they had 22 researchers.
So he was proving or disproving
Sutherland's concepts.
The concepts of the cranial.
Exactly. And so one of the things they did, they used live Ricci monkeys, and they put electrodes on the parietal bones, and then they sent radio frequency through those electrodes, those antennae, and they were attached to an oscilloscope type of thing. And so any variation of movement in these antennae would reflect in the motions on the oscilloscope. And what they found was the antennae were moving apart and together at a rate of about 10 cycles per minute.
Wow.
So here was living proof, that the bones move. He then went on to develop, there had been a movement within the osteopathic community of craniosacral osteopaths, and they had developed craniosacral therapeutics. And so Dr. John took a lot of Sutherland's manual techniques and created a therapy called craniosacral therapy. And he taught that around the world. And the Institute's still active. And he said that this should be taught to anyone with a good intention and with a good touch and a willingness to be of help. And he said that CST belongs to the world and not any one institute or any one school of thought or any one school, and that we need to share it with the world. And he said that if you're going to do craniosacral therapy, I challenge you to make the world a touch better. And it's from that he also introduced some really beautiful, he talked about intention. The touch is so light. Why can we have an effect if the touch is so light? And he said the basis, the power of our work is based on intention. And he said that there's a consciousness in the body and a non-conscious. And we can access the non-conscious of the body by way of the cranial rhythm. because the cranial rhythm changes and moves by way of the consciousness, the non-conscious of the inner workings of the body. Going back to the other founders that said the origins of the cranial rhythm are in the divine and come from our innate nature.
Sounds like another episode.
It is.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to continue on with this in our next installment of the series. My name is Charisse Bergoski. This is Dawn Ash here with me. I hope you tune in next time to your inner wisdom in fluid form. Thank you.
Thank you.
Check in again for more episodes on your inner wisdom in fluid form. Thanks for listening.
萬里豔陽斜照，心興奮怎麼遮掩？回味昨日無數天真的可愛笑臉，沒有了困倦煩惱，拋走了世俗負累，來共聚於此刻歌聲裏，譜出溫馨美妙，多動人尋夢調，傾出光輝歲月。
Because in craniosacral therapy it's very important to have that three movement of the sacrum in between both hip bones. I personally see a lot of people that have chronic pain, that have trauma or high anxiety or have tinnitus or whiplash or concussion, and then I work a lot with the head and the bones, and I assess the movements that the bones make. In the skull, I work with the intracranial membranous system inside the head, which is the tissue inside your brain. And if there's been a fall or even severe trauma, then usually this is quite impacted, and I would feel for that and try and nudge that along to come back into balance and to in alignment. Another thing that we work with is sinus problems. This, for instance, is your superior sagittarius sinus. We will work with that to get the fluid better flowing again and to address any sinus problems, congestion, restrictions that there might actually be.
我哋唔會俾過多嘅，因為如果我哋順應頭先嗰個自愈全身五部曲，我哋係 feel 住佢嘅筋膜嘅流動，去帶動佢嗰個身體嘅反應。咁嗰個係佢身體做主導，唔係我哋嘅計算。咁所以唔會過多嘅，佢夠咧佢就唔會 take up 㗎啦。咁所以頭先你話做幾耐咧？任何一陣洋葱皮嘅釋放都係一個好嘅自然嘅效果。喺我哋唔知頭唔知路，個 client 又唔知頭唔知路，原來 upper 就話咧咁樣咧都有咧20% 大師級嘅療效。我的當下為你已經瘋狂了，安排我心跳，沒有你根本不長久。相遇了。
谢谢。